Very good morning. So welcome to the part 4 of economic survey for prelims discussion. So what we are going to do, what all chapter is pending? From chapter 7 to 9, 3 chapters we are covering in this class. In all the previous classes we have already done the first 1 to 6 chapters. And one more class we will be having, in that we will cover chapter from 10, 11 and 12. So we will be covering all this economic survey especially from prelims point of view. All other data relevance, all other irrelevant data that is not having a chance for coming in the prelims, we are omitted it. We are only focusing on what exactly new government schemes are there, or where there is a trend in XYZ data which has a scope for coming in the as a statement in the exam. That's only we have taken from the economic survey. Go ahead. So the first 7th chapter is climate change and environment, preparing to face the future. Net zero targets. What exactly is net zero means? Does it mean zero emissions? If a country is emitting X and it is sequestrating or absorbing X, this becomes equal, then the country is said to be have achieved the net zero. Now India, what is India's targets of net zero emissions? 2070. By 2070, India is said to achieve the XYZ net zero emissions. Mostly the world was putting up a target of 2050. And what were India's major objections before putting this target, net zero targets? India really opposed or not so positive about mid-century net zero target. Why? India has two reasons. One is developmental reason. That means we cannot let the population live in poverty in the name of climate change or in the name of clean energy or anything. We need cheaper electricity and we need to burn coal for a considerable amount of future for this cheaper electricity. That is one reason. Second reason is India says that net zero targets countries are setting in early 2020s. In early 2020s, countries like the advanced country like Germany, Japan, US and all this are setting a targets of net zero in 2050. There is a gap of 30 years. Now, if you are not achieving, we will have to wait 30 years to see whether the XYZ country is achieving or not. So it's a very long-term target that doesn't make so much of sense. That was one argument. Third argument was, one more argument was that it is not the net zero that exactly matters, but the how you reach the net zero. If by reaching the net zero you emit so much of carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas emissions, and by 2050 you reach the net zero, that is in overall, if you picture you look, that is not going to help. What you want is a cleaner or sustainable transition mechanism from right now to 2050. So overall, if you look, you are emitting less, not that you are achieving something at the end of the XYZ. So these were some objections why India was not so happy or not so appreciable about 2050 or mid-century net zero emission target, and India has came up with a 2070 net zero target. Now, despite India kept these net zero targets at a very long period, India has ambitiously expanded its NDC targets or INDC targets. What is our new INDC targets? There are basically 3 dimensions for INDC targets. One is emission intensity. What is emission intensity? For 1 unit of GDP, how much greenhouse gases you have? Greenhouse gases for 1 unit of GDP. So India's target was reduce it by 33 to 35% from 2015 level. That was the earlier targets. Now it has been revised to 45%. Now we currently by 2060s we have achieved that. By 24% we already achieved, and it is said that by now we already achieved 30%. So 15% is what we have to achieve by 2030. Another one is share of non-fossil fuel in installed electricity capacity. Earlier it was 40%, now India revised it to 50% by 2030. This is how much is the current value? We are already generating around 59% of 58 point something % of our generation is coming from coal or thermal sources. These are polluting sources or non-renewable sources. Rest 41% is already coming from this non-fossil fuel based sources, which includes which all are major contributions. One is renewable energy, then large hydro is a bigger contribution. So these all includes already 41%. So India can achieve, because only 8.5% is the gap that is existing in. Then there is a carbon sink. India will create a new carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of additional sink will be created. There is no revision or there is no mention of this XYZ target. So these are the basic how this is happening by creation of new forest. If you look at the Indian Forest Survey reports, IFSR, every year we are increasing the green content or increasing the forest content. So there has been some progress, but exactly quantifiable data is not being released by Economic Survey or any other reports. Go ahead. These are like different countries, what is their year of targets they are having for net zero emissions. Not too much important, at least you should know India's emissions, India's emission targets. What is carbon stock? How much amount of carbon that is being sequestrated from the atmosphere and stored in biomass, dead wood, soil, litter, and this total carbon quantity you call it as carbon stock. Which kind of atmosphere this carbon stock will be highest? In forest it will be higher, but more higher will be in permafrost. What is permafrost? Where the ground is frozen for more than 2 years or beyond that. And if any carbon deposit is there, it will remain that for centuries. So permafrost is mainly in higher latitude areas or in higher altitude areas like mountains and all. This permafrost contains huge amount of carbon stock. Now one reason global warming is creating is it is causing melting down of these permafrost areas. This will create again like a cyclic event which reinforces the climate change or whatever greenhouse gas emission changes we are seeing right now. So in India, if you look, maximum carbon stocks are found in Arunachal Pradesh, after that Madhya Pradesh. So these are due to mainly forest, not due to permafrost or anything. Now if you look at maximum per hectare carbon stock, where you find it in India is, these all come in permafrost or something like that. Because these are Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal, Sikkim, all these are high altitude states. Go ahead. Now if you look at India's energy generation, we already discussed this. Around 58% of India's generation is coming from coal or fossil fuels. But if you look at how renewable energy is performing, there is a green content. Earlier it was only very small part of it. Now it has been increased to higher part of it. So growth in renewables energy is greater than growth in coal or thermal sources. So if you look at the energy trend analysis, you can say that India is overall transitioning from thermal to coal sectors already. The transition process is already going on. That's why you can see how much this green graph is increased, very little throughout the years. But the blue graph, but the green graph has considerably increased over the years. Go ahead. It is not considered in many definitions. In non-fossil fuel for INDC targets, it is considered. That's why we are getting this by including large hydro. We are getting 41.5% we currently achieved by including all these. But many definitions of this renewable, it is not included part of it. Yeah, this is sovereign green bonds. What exactly it is? Everything is exactly same as bond. It is a debt instrument, and government will issue this, or sovereign authority will issue it and raise money from the market. Only difference is this raised money will be used for renewable energy or green projects. What all it include? Renewable energy, clean transportation, sustainable water waste management, pollution prevention, green building, natural resource conservation, terrestrial and aquatic biodiversity conservation, energy efficiency, XYZ initiative, climate change adaptation initiative. All these projects will be included as green projects. What you should note down is some projects are exclusively excluded from the sovereign green bonds. If you are investing, you cannot invest the sovereign green bonds in this. Which all are it is? New or existing extraction projects like coal extraction projects or something like that. Nuclear power generation, nuclear power is not a part of it. Direct waste incineration. What is incineration? You are burning the waste at higher temperature in excess presence of oxygen. Alcohol, weapons, tobacco, gaming, palm oil industries. Why palm oil industries are added into this?
Because they consume lot of oil, water.
Not exactly. Palm oil industries, most industries are in tropical region, in Indonesia, Malaysia, these countries. In India, which areas are good for palm oil cultivation? Northeast countries or like thick forest countries. Now, if you are converting these areas into palm oil cultivation, you will lose huge amount of biodiversity or ecosystem. So, due to this, palm oil industries are also included in this. Renewable energy projects like biomass, feedstock, all these are not part of it. Landfill projects are not part of it. Hydro project large hydro projects, that is hydro project beyond 25 megawatts are also not part of the sovereign green bonds. Very high chance a question can come on this. So much it may complete. Biogas plant is also not included. Biomass using feedstock, that kind of exactly it is not included. Take a picture. This is exact wording from the framework that is XYZ given. So take a picture and you should have some clarity on this. Now, what is some speciality of this bond? These are eligible for repo as well as SLR operations. Why RBI is doing this? For promotion of this. Then only the banks and other institutions will be interested in this, buying these bonds. NRIs are also eligible to invest. Objective is to mobilize more funds into it. Payment of principal and interest on these bonds are not conditional. Not conditional on what? Not conditional on performance of the eligible projects. Suppose you took money and invested in some projects. This sovereign guarantee is given by the government. What X% interest you will get, government will pay you the interest irrespective of how the project performs. Understanding? Like this is also a step to give more security for investors to invest in these kind of projects. These are not market linked. Like these are like bonds, government long-term bonds. Long-term bonds means what? There will be a fixed coupon for it. Now mostly you will get this coupon at the end of maturity. And this coupon is not linked to the performance of XYZ where the investment is done. Go ahead. Now India has came up with Lead IT. What is exactly Lead IT? Leadership Group on Industry Transition. What it focuses on? Clean energy transition basically. This has been initiated by India and Sweden at UN Climate Action Summit in 2019. You should be very clear about the countries, India as well as Sweden. Basic idea is to provide the know-how, technologies, cross-sectoral learning on commercialization of new technology to facilitate the XYZ transition. Achieve industrial net zero emissions and all these by 2050. That is a broad objective of Lead IT. Take fast. Okay. Now we are going to the 8th chapter, that is agriculture and food management, from food security to nutritional security. First thing is agricultural growth. What do you have to see about agricultural growth? Agricultural growth is depending on so many XYZ factors. It is depending on monsoonal dependencies. If rain is coming at wrong time, it will be impacted. If rain is not coming, it will be impacted. Now, despite rain, if rain everything come good, then there will be surplus production. If there is surplus production, then the market price of commodity will fall so much. Then also it can create loss to the XYZ farmers. So there is so much risk farmers are supposed to. And due to this, you can see the growth rate is always zigzag. If some El Nino year is there, you will see a considerable fall in agricultural growth, and maybe within next 1 year you will see the growth shooting up. So this has been a feature of Indian agriculture. If you look at the current growth, its trend is in decreasing direction. Like we have 6.5% growth, but recently we are getting only 3 or 3.3% growth. Despite being that, during the pandemic age, it was one sector that was consistently showing up positive growth rate, whereas the industry as well as services has been completely limited due to this lockdown and all other things. Go ahead. What is very important concept? What is crowding in of private investment?
Government invest and it promotes investment and private sector.
Exactly. Suppose government build a road. Government invested in building this road. This road government invested how much? Suppose 100 crore rupees. Government invested. Now due to this, government had already invested and created a very good road. So many private people have came and created food processing industries here. Now if you look at throughout the road, how much food processing for 1000 crore investment, food processing industries has been established throughout the road length. Now government, this happened because government put X money. Now if government put X money, a 10x money has been put in investment as private sector. This XYZ phenomenon we call it as crowding in of private sector. What is crowding out of private sector? Government is like there is market. Whoever wants fund is going to the market. If government is going to the market and taking huge amount of money and government is investing in whatever XYZ sectors. If government is taking out too much money from the market, it will increase the borrowing cost. Now if borrowing cost is increased, private industries will find it difficult to borrow or will not borrow. Now if private is not borrowing, government is taking out all the money, so that private is left with no money to invest, or private is not doing the investment. This XYZ phenomenon we call it as crowding out. Here government is investing something, this is pushing private sector to invest much greater amount into XYZ associated allied industries or allied projects. Go ahead. In agriculture we see the phenomenon of crowding in of private investment. Even if you look at the recent data, government investment is only 4.3%, whereas the private investment is almost beyond 2 into times, that is 9.3% we have private investment in the agricultural sector with respect to GDP. Throughout here we are like same trend is being followed throughout the part. Go ahead. Now if we look at the what is trend of food grain production in India, we have seen that India is facing so many disruptions in climate, like heat waves is impacting this wheat production, or the extra rain is impacting the tomato production, vegetable production, lemon production, all these. So if these all, despite having all this, if you look at the total grain production, that is consistently increasing over a period. From 2016-17, it has been always in a higher direction. If a question come in last 5 years, this has been consistently increasing, you have to take it as a correct statement. Food grain production, despite all the disruptions we are talking about, food grain production is increasing in India. Now 2023 has been declared as International Year of Millets by United Nations General Assembly. What is speciality of millets? It can be a solution to India's nutritional security. India's anemic problem, all this can be addressed by millets. Now what is something about millets this economic survey is speaking about? What it is saying? India produces more than 50% like 20% of world's millets are being produced by India. And more interestingly, if you look at the yield, what is yield? How much kg it is being produced per hectare. India's millet yield is greater than world average. Only on very few crops India has higher yield than global average. So India's yield on millets is greater than global average, and India itself produces 20% of the global millet production. Now millet is mostly rabi or kharif crop. It is mostly a kharif crop that is grown in rain-fed conditions. Mostly in rain-fed conditions. Millets is a like collection of different items like foxtail millet, finger millet, barnyard millet. So many millets are there, different parts of the country. This you can learn which millet is coming and which part of the country. Have a broad idea of this. Rest, these are the basics and geography of the millets. You can learn more about it. Go ahead. One more thing you have to add is government is promoting 500 startups in millet value chain, like food processing in millet, food transportation in millets. Government is promoting, and the scheme is called RAFTAR, RKVY, RAFTAR scheme, remunerative approach for agriculture and allied sector rejuvenation. Under this, 250 startups are already working on XYZ millet supply chain. Go ahead. All these schemes you note down. Go and learn more about these schemes if there is a chance to come in the exam. Now, what else trend you should know in agriculture sector? If you look at the farmer's income or agriculture contribution to GVA, what we observe is, what the green line is, that is the gross value added from crops. Now, if you look at last 10 years or 2011-12 to 2021, in 11-12, 65.4% was gross value added or GDP or GVA was contributed by crops. Now it has been consistently falling to, now it reached 55.1%. So where this shift is happening? From crops to other sectors or allied sectors. What are these allied sectors? Livestock, forestry, fishing and aquaculture. So farmers are getting more income or more gross value is being generated in the allied sectors. Trend is these sectors are being getting more revenue or more remunerative than XYZ crops. Go ahead. Now if you look at the food subsidy, the trend is India is almost spending a huge amount of GDP on food subsidy, and you can see a very huge spike in, like almost 3 times or more than that, you can see a spike in food subsidy bill. Why this spike happened? Due to pandemic. And what exactly was the scheme name? Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. 5 kg of extra and some other cereals were also provided along with this to huge amount of population. Due to this, there has been increase in food subsidy bill during pandemic, but the current trend is it is getting normalized. It is on during this time itself, government for Food Corporation of India, government came up with suggestion of extra budgetary borrowings. Food Corporation of India was told to source some of its food subsidy bill from the market. So FCI will go and take the loan or XYZ from the market. It will not be included in the budget of that year budget. But it is the responsibility of the government to pay the extra budgetary borrowing from the budget itself. Go ahead. Now we have some very important thing, that is agriculture infrastructure fund. Why? What was the requirement of this fund? When we always talk about the credit supply or credit being given into the agriculture sector, the focus is on short-term credit. What is the short-term credit? Credit to buy the seeds, credit to buy, continue the agriculture process, like fertilizer. It is only like for one short term, one XYZ cycle or 2 cycles, that investment, to continue this investment, that is what being called as agriculture credit. But if you really want to improve the agriculture sector, what we want to improve? We want to improve the productivity. Productivity of agriculture will only improve by increased mechanization, increased use of technology. All this require long-term credit. So with the objective of increasing long-term credit into agriculture sector, this agriculture infrastructure fund was formed. Objective is size of the fund is 1 lakh crore fund. 25 projects per individual beneficiary in different locations will be set up. Now you can see the details of this. It will act as a fund of fund. It will give different allocation to different funds, and they will distribute it among the farmers or different projects under this. Interest subvention is a part of this. What is interest subvention? Suppose you will be given loan for 5%. Now if you are timely repaying this loan, then government will give you some reduce your interest rate. Earlier the interest rate was 5, now it will be reduced to 4% or 3%, depending if you are timely repaying this XYZ repayment. So this is interest subvention is also part of it, but interest subvention is only applicable for projects up to 2 crore rupees. Beyond that, interest subvention is not applicable. Credit guarantee is extended by the government. This is also for up to 2 crore rupees projects. 7 years is the moratorium period. 7 years is the repayment period that is given for projects under this. Government of lending process will be facilitated. Lending institution will be convergence of different other projects, so that you will get from just money will be given by one institution, expertise will be given by another institution. To remove this confusion, all this will be combined and you will be given training as well as money as well as other what is required for starting a new business in the agri infrastructure. All this will be provided at one place. Convergence will be also a part of this. Now these are the focus areas like post harvest projects, cold chain, viability gap funding, and hub and spoke model. All this will be promoted under this XYZ scheme. Can see more about this. And loan will be not just given to farmers, farmer groups like food farmer producer organization, FPCs, all these are a part of it. Agripreneurs, what is agripreneurs or agri entrepreneurs? Startups that is based in agriculture sector. Large business groups who want to invest in agriculture, all these are eligible for, even large business groups are eligible for funding under this area for agri infrastructure funding. State agencies are even eligible for this. When statement come, you should identify this, you should remember this. Go ahead. These all basic things we discussed. Operational from 2021 to 2029-30. Interest subvention is a part of it. Scheme does not have a minimum or maximum cap. There is a rupees 2 crore criteria. Within the 2 crore you will have credit guarantee, within the 2 crore you will have interest subvention and all this. But there is no such criteria that you will get only 2 crore. There is no minimum or maximum limit defined under this scheme. And you cannot take 100% loan. You cannot start anything with 100% loan. At least 10% of the project cost should be paid by the investor or the organization which is investing in it. These are all features of agriculture infrastructure fund. Go ahead, 1 lakh crore investment is being provided under this. Now let's go into the 9th chapter, that is industry steady recovery. So what is the industry sector means? Basically it is manufacturing sector. What is importance of manufacturing sector? If you look at the development of a country mostly associated with transition of population from low productivity sectors to high productivity sectors. Mostly countries start with agriculture. Agriculture issue is low productivity. If whole population is depending on agriculture, your GDP will be extremely low, there will be poverty. So you transfer more into manufacturing sector, there will be higher productivity. Then countries go into services sector. But what is issues with India's transition? India jumped from agriculture to services sector. And what is consequence of this? Here agriculture productivity is low. Like even if you look at, consider India's current case, 15 to 17% of GDP is contributed by agriculture, but 45% of population is dependent on this. So this will lead to inequality. Small amount of wealth is being distributed by so much of people. Other 83% of the wealth will be distributed by other people. This will lead to inequality. This will lead to so many other problems also. In services also, what is the issue? Services need specialized skills. It is productivity is extremely high here, but it requires specialized skills. And the employment elasticity, how much job for even like a company of 5 people can generate revenue of crores by building an app, by building some service companies. Even a small number of people can create revenues in crores or very huge numbers. So service sector, number of people the XYZ GDP or can provide the job is very less. That is one. And even if you are providing the job, you need a specialized skilled workforce. And in current scenario, what is happening? This definition of these specialized skills are constantly changing. Which is applicable for 5 years later, new kind of programming language is coming, new kind of market skills are becoming in demand. So service sector cannot absorb the huge amount of population that is coming from agriculture. If India has to develop, India has to depopulate from agriculture sector. And this depopulation cannot be absorbed by service sector. So where this will go? This has to go in manufacturing sector, and manufacturing sector is considerably a little bit weaker in India. That's why we have so much government schemes or government support that is available for MSMEs, for companies, for everything that is manufacturing companies. PLI scheme, different schemes, government support is extensively provided for manufacturing sector. Objective is the developmental objective which we have discussed so far. Clear? Now what is the sectoral performance of this industry? It is contributing around 31% of the GDP and around 10-12 crore people are employed in this. So this industry is capable of absorbing more people, so that's why we are promoting the XYZ industry. Go ahead. What is employment elasticity? If your GDP is 100, suppose 100 rupee or 100 US dollar, whatever it is, it becomes 101. Then how much number of new jobs is provided, or how much number of new jobs is being created? This is called employment elasticity. For 1% increase in GDP, how much number of new jobs is being created? There has been what is the current trend in Indian economy? It is from 1980s, if you look, it is considerably falling. Why it is falling? Our labor productivity has increased. Our labor is more shifting into services sector. So it's a huge productivity sector. All these are reasons for over the decadal performance or decadal trend. If you look 1990s to 2010s, this employment elasticity is considerably falling. Now FDI. What is FDI? Basically, foreign investors are investing in Indian companies with the objective of acquiring the company, with the objective of controlling the management of the company. Quantitatively, it will be, if about 10% investment is done in a company, we call it as FPI or FDI, foreign direct investment. And manufacturing industry is one of the biggest sources of FDI. And where the most investment or FDI is coming? Computer software and hardware is the highest FDI absorbing sector in India. Second sector is trading. All these are part of it. 22 services are part of it. All these are high FDI absorbing sectors. Go ahead. Role of MSMEs. What is MSMEs? We recently changed the definition of MSMEs. Earlier there was very complex criteria. Now MSMEs are defined on 2 criteria, that is investment and turnover. investment is less than 1 crore or turnover is less than 5 crore, we call it as micro in category. If investment is greater less than 10 crore, turnover less than 50 crore, we call it as small. If investment is more than less than 20 crore and investment less than turnover less than 100 crore, we call it as medium MSME industries. So in India, if you look at huge percentage of the companies, this is a very broad definition government has kept. Why this is kept? So that most of the Indian companies become eligible for whatever the tax subsidies or whatever the capital subsidies, whatever other XYZ government support schemes are provided, they will become eligible for this. That's why a very broad XYZ definition of MSME is adopted by the government. Now, what is the contribution? Around 40 to 50% of what is this? GV exports. Exports in India are contributed by MSMEs, as well as in GVA, as well as manufacturing GVA, considerable share, for 30 to 40% share is being contributed by MSMEs. So MSMEs contribution is much considerable in all the sectors, especially the manufacturing sectors. Go ahead. What is Resilient India Fund? Self-Resilient India Fund. It is a part of Atmanirbhar Bharat that has been launched during the pandemic. Basic objective is continuing the credit flow into MSMEs. During pandemic, what happened? MSMEs were highly constrained because they don't have this issue of lack of access to institutional credit. And if institutional credit is there, the cost of funding become too high, or the provisions, even if some government was giving you don't pay this EMI for X number of month. All these are applicable only if you are taken fund from institutional credit. If you are taken from private authorities, all these become validless, like it is not applicable to you. So to avoid this and consistently increasing the institutional credit flow to the MSME sector, government has came up with Self-Reliant India Fund. That is the objective. NSIC Capital Fund Limited. This is a 100% subsidiary of National Small Industries Corporation Limited. This will be the operating the XYZ fund. It will be regulated by SEBI. All these micro details you can read from here. Go ahead. What is this? Is a very interesting concept, that is flipping of startups. Can you guess what exactly is flipping of startups? Flipping and reverse flipping is also in news recently. What is flipping? Suppose an X company is being founded by a person founded this X company, and he found that it is very beneficial for him. He is the founder of the company. He, at a particular point, he found that it is very beneficial for him to sell this company to any foreign brand or foreign investor. Now, if we find a foreign investor and he sell his shares to this investor and take money from him, this deal we call it as flipping of startups. Startups which is owned by Indian citizens or Indians are being sold to the foreign brands or foreign companies. Now, why this is happening? Either it can be happening due to the founder lost interest, or founder doesn't want to engage with the companies anymore, or it can be due to, suppose this startup is more engaged with its sales are happening in the foreign countries. So if a foreign investor is acquiring it, the expansion of the country or can happen in much larger scale. So due to economic reason or the interest of the investor, these are happening. Now government if doing something so that this flipping of startup doesn't happen. Government brings some regulation. Government gives some added taxes. Government are creating a system so that the so much of flipping of startup is not being promoted. So such a system, such a scenario we call it as reverse flipping. That is, government is creating constraints so that flipping of startups is not becoming a very rush trend. So that's all for now. We have discussed which all chapters? 7, 8 and 9 chapters. Next class we will be discussing last 3 chapters of the economic survey. that will be the end of the economics session that is going on. Thank you so much.